This is the hardest part, getting out and getting going from a warm tent into this absolute blizzard. There's virtually no visibility.
Literally overnight, blue skies disappeared and we're now completely enveloped in a whiteout.
The wind will be on our side again, at least it's not in our face, but we are continuing to drift east, which could be our undoing.
We're a race against the clock at the moment. We need just a lot of luck. And this is what the Arctic has become. It's more storms, lots of snow, and lots of open water. This is one of the many ways we ferry across these leads. We probably have to do many, many crossings right now, and we need to be more efficient and quick.
So we've been island hopping. This is about the third island we've got onto. The first one we swam across, managed to cross via a frozen block to the second, then stepped onto the third via a very narrow crack, and we're teetering here on the edge of what appears to be an abyss into the water.
And we're stopped again because right in front of us is water, and we're kind of uncertain if we can get to the other side. And things are cracking and moving. It's not really super safe to be here. It's so worth protecting what remaining ice we still have. And we really have to start changing our behavior with fossil fuels, because otherwise this will be all water really soon.
If you can imagine what it would be like to lose all the mountains in the world, or all the deserts, or all the lakes, or all the rivers, it's just the same kind of analogy. Once it's gone, it's gone.
I don't have to tell you. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute, it already starts wrong. I don't have to tell you that the Arctic is a dangerous place. You probably already knew that. And my life as a polar explorer is finished. In fact, I am the last polar explorer that was there. No one since 2014 was able to do an expedition like I did, skiing from the North Pole back to Canada. So in my lifetime, I've seen this environment changed dramatically. In 10 years, it went from a really good place to an absolute horrible place to be. And I'm going to take you in the next half an hour. These are my earrings, huh? Very irritating. Hold on. Take them off. Better? Yes, better. Now's my hair. Shall I cut it off too? Yeah. Okay. All right. My God, maybe I need help. It's beyond help. There. So, in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to take you, I think I got it, where we are in the world with climate change, because it's so great to be here to hear all these great speeches. You guys, rock and roll. You are my heroes. You are the future. But do we forget, really, what kind of world we have at the moment? So, I'm the messenger of bad news, so please don't kill me. But I also will end up with something positive. But let's take a look at the moment where we are. This picture I put in this morning for some reason. You know where this is? You probably already know. This is North Carolina in the United States. As we speak, they're bracing for Hurricane Francis. In 2012, the state of North Carolina had a chance to do it right. They had a committee, a liberal, progressive city council, and they said, you know, we are so exposed, we need to do something about climate change. Let's build an infrastructure. It got washed off the table. You know why? It would hurt real estate. I'm telling you, tomorrow they will regret that decision forever. We know that climate change is a problem. You already know all of this. And why is it then that we start measuring it since 1953, our CO2 emissions, that every year we pump more CO2 in the sky? In fact, it's never been this high as this year. Look at this graph, it keeps on rising. And climate critics will tell you, well, it's just natural, you know, every 100,000 years we have CO2 in the atmosphere, and then we go down to an ice age, and then we have a warming period. But this picture doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't. So it only leads to one conclusion: we humans really are the problem. We are creating our own grave. We're doing this. I'm going to go back with you to the Arctic because it tells us a lot of important information. And this is the area I know most about. So in the Arctic, we have lost about half of the ice, 50%, the equivalent of the entire European area. In fact, more than that. So we're losing ice, not just in extent, but we're also losing it in width, in thickness. Only in 4 years, the ice is really shrinking. 10 years ago, when I first skied to the North Pole in 2007, everywhere the ice was just about 1 meter thick. And now nowhere is it thicker than about 20 centimeters. 90% of the Arctic is less than 10 centimeters. So then you can just imagine when there is wind, it will go all over the place. It is able just to drift and bump against other ice floes and break up and all that, which has actually led to something very serious in the Arctic. An Arctic hurricane. Never have we seen that before, but we had one in 2012. The ice in 2012 was actually just fine. It was relatively healthy. Of course, we get less and less each year, but in 2012, one event made it from an okay year into an absolute tipping point. Next year, in the Green Challenge, I would love to see an entry that can solve this. It is our problem of albedo. The whole world benefits from ice. It is simply our air conditioning. It keeps the global temperatures everywhere in the world 16 degrees. If you take away Antarctica, if you take away Greenland, if you take away the North Pole, if you take away all the glaciers in the Alps, guess what will happen? We have more dark surface absorbing radiation, absorbing all that heat, and spiking our global temperatures with not 1, no 2 degrees in a couple of years. So, if we can figure out how to get albedo back, white surfaces, white pavement, white roofs, anything, for those sunbeams, when they come out of the atmosphere, 80% when it hits the white surface goes right back into the atmosphere. That is, I think, where we really can help our planet. So for the ice, it's too late. I'm not optimistic. I'm an unemployed polar explorer. I have to find another job. I can no longer do what I love to do. It hurts. And this is what we think is going to happen this year. A runaway climate, an Arctic death spiral, where perhaps in 2018, we will know this in 10 days, we will reach a situation that the Arctic is for the first time ice-free in the North Pole. And then us, humans, we have created a new ocean, the Arctic Ocean. So really what I want to say is that the Arctic and the polar bears that live there are no longer the victim of climate change. They are the driving force. Because all this increased water, the lack of albedo, you know what that means? It means it accelerates the warming of our planet. It's what we called a positive feedback loop. It is put into motion already like a machine, and we are standing by and watching it. And pretty soon, if we're really not getting our act together, there's nothing we can do. And it will just run its course. And that we cannot allow to happen, simply. So just recently, in a New York Times article, you might have read it because it went viral in a way, James Hansen, my favorite NASA scientist, said, we have the same temperatures today as we did right before the last ice age. So we're already warming our Earth. Only with this difference that right before the ice age, the oceans were about 60 meters higher. So I hear you thinking, why aren't the oceans 60 meters higher today if we have the same temperature? Because of this. This is permafrost. Everywhere in the world, there is permafrost. It is still locked in by ice. And now here comes the scary part. In this report it says, if we increase the temperatures 1 degree, this is all going to thaw. And then we have a situation that is not very pleasant, because methane gas, when it gets emitted in the atmosphere, is 23 times more potent than CO2. So all this methane that is now nice and frozen in the world will spike our temperatures by 3 degrees. And what would our world look like? 4 degrees of warming. It won't be very pleasant. In fact, most places in the world will simply become uninhabitable. So back to my North Pole trips. I've done 4. All of them were awful. But all of them were good in the sense that they taught me a lot of lessons. I've skied from Russia to the North Pole, from the North Pole to Canada. In fact, I've crossed the entire Arctic. But nothing was as bad as 2017. This is in the middle of the night. The ice was cracking under my tent. We had 5 minutes to gather all our belongings, throw it to one side, hopefully the right side, all go to one spot, and literally we saw our tent collapsing into the crack. That wasn't that, then the crack actually closed with our tent in it. This is just an example of how dangerous it has become to be there. And I was so happy that I actually had a camera to basically record it. Or this. There's so much energy right now in the atmosphere, particularly in the Arctic, that it snows. Not just 5 centimeters, no, 1 meter. Lots and lots of snow. All our heat is in the atmosphere. A lot is going into the ocean, but mostly the energy is right in the clouds. The 10 hottest years were all in the last decade. This year is going to book as another record year. Last year, 2016, was horrible. And where does all this heat go? This heat goes into places where we simply cannot use it. It goes in the Arctic. It goes warm, hot temperatures in the Siberian taiga, in the forests of Canada, in places where we rather not see any more increased heat. I'm Canadian. I'm also Dutch, but I'm also Canadian. And 3 years in a row, I have personally suffered the ill effects of forest fires. In fact, this year I went to the emergency room because I had to be treated of inhalation of smoke. Last year, I was on evacuation order. If you are living in California, like these poor people here in Redding, California, 2 days ago, this was their situation. The prediction is now that nobody can live in California anymore. So what are we going to do with 33 million people living in a state, the same as in my country, Canada? Where are they going to go? Just to stick for smoke for a second, because it's so outrageous. Smoke is everywhere. I don't think I've had a clear day at my house. Smoke travels. That's the other part about it. It goes places where it has nothing to do with forest fires. California, Washington, Idaho, they all suffer from lots and lots of smoke. And here, of course, in Europe, Portugal, Spain, Greece. And it gives a lot of people that have to get treated for their diseases. But back to the Arctic. Why is it so worrisome, all the smoke in the northern atmosphere? Why is it so worrisome that we are seeing now the wildfire smokes right on the North Pole? And smoke, we learned recently, is another positive feedback loop because it traps heat and makes that ice even melt faster. So we're all having these cycles that are perpetually reinforcing one another. And on the Greenland ice cap, of course, the soot from smoke lands on the ice. This is last year in August, after the worst season on fires, of course, till now, because we're still having fires as I speak. And the soot lands on the ice, accelerating the melt. Black, anything black, gets hot and melts. Anything white, albedo, reflects back in the atmosphere. Atmosphere is one thing, oceans is another. The heat in the oceans finally is catching up with us. We know all the pictures. Last year, Hurricane Harvey. This year, it's a little bit better because of an El Nino year that we're going to have. But this was Harvey. Wiped out Texas. Texas is 6 times more likely to get a Category 5 hurricane than anywhere else in the United States. What was worrisome about Harvey was that right next to it is the biggest oil refineries of the United States. 35% of the gas production, 95% of the oil, kerosene that comes here, is made here, is produced here. Harvey was heading straight towards the ExxonMobil refinery, but took a little detour at the end. This is to illustrate that it affects all of us, even if it happens somewhere else. Because if this was wiped out, the price of a barrel of oil would have raised overnight to $350, and we would have had a crash on Wall Street. And then it would have had an effect on all of us, even here in the Netherlands. So I don't have to tell you, with these 3 Category 5 hurricanes last year, it was the most costliest year for insurance companies in the world. In fact, so costly that now we wonder if we can even insure people for forest fires. We wonder if the people in Texas can even get insurance for hurricanes. And this all brings down to one thing. We are setting into motion something that is quite dramatic, a meandering jet stream. A meandering jet stream basically means that normally the weather is perfect, it is high up in the sky. Jet stream means where the pilots get this nice wind that allows you to be 1 hour faster in Amsterdam than if you return. It's a wind at 10 kilometers, formed by cold air from the poles and warm air from the equator. They collide and forms wind. This warm air from the poles is not so cold, the cold air from the poles is not so cold, it is warmer. And the jet stream cannot form as a solid wind. It is all over the place. And when it dips down, it brings Arctic, still colder air into areas where it normally never gets cold, like Florida, snow. And on the upside, it brings hot air from the equator to Greenland or to the North Pole, where it's much warmer. So we're seeing really bizarre, extreme weather situations that no one can predict, let alone prepare us for. So this is this summer. The hottest temperatures, the records in the United States, on one hand, in America, all in California, the West, and the wettest, the most rain on the other side of the country, in the East. One country. And we've seen these pictures. California is desperate. It's the agriculture. So anything with agriculture that we can do is so needed, is dire. The Californian farmers have no water to grow their avocados and the almonds. And yet, on the other side, we have rain. We see places like Kansas, 230 days without rain. There is no grain harvest this year in Kansas and Oklahoma and Iowa. And even we see it here in the Netherlands. Single-cell superstorms, breaking our glass houses, farmers getting hail balls this big, destroying our harvest. Insurance companies like, we can continue to insure this. This is hopeless. So it is everywhere. Everybody is now affected with the effects of climate change. So we know this all. I'm not telling you anything new. Why can we not see it? I mean, we see the smoke from the forest fires, but we cannot see or smell CO2 in the atmosphere. So we still treat it as a bit of a problem that's far away. And even if you suffered, even if you are a victim of climate change, the thing you want to do is build up your own city, your own place, and not really getting into action for a better world. That's also documented. Why do we need to make movies that are so absurd, so exaggerated, that they become unbelievable? Why are books about climate change or our biggest humanitarian challenge that we face, bigger than any war, our planet, why are they not in the top 10 best-selling lists? We all know where we were when the wall of Berlin was breaking down. Maybe you guys are too young to remember that. But you certainly knew where you were when 9/11 was hitting. Did you know where you were when the Earth reached 400 parts per million? What were you doing? Or when the Larsen B, the biggest environmental disaster, happened in the world, when that happened last year, do you know where you were? We are trying. Copenhagen. This was when you left, the failed climate summit. I was there. This was the poster, all of them. They were 80 years old. Sorry, we knew, but we didn't. So are we gonna wait till the Paris Agreement, how good it is, because we all signed it? Are we gonna wait till 2020 and implement it? Well, our planet is on its deathbed. We simply cannot wait a few more years. Not if you look at this picture. The clock is ticking. And I'll tell you one thing I learned by doing this a lot for many years. Nothing is linear in climate change. We've seen it before. Easter Island. A civilization of 40,000 people that managed to cut the last tree And then there was nothing. There was no more wood they couldn't sustain. It's the furthest island out there in the Pacific. What was this person thinking when he cut down the last tree? I mean, are we capable of just committing our own suicide? So here's what I think. It's finished with Wall Street. We need New Street. We lack leadership, frankly. There's a few examples that always come back as people that we inspire to. People think we're great or doing the good things, but there's not enough of them. We need many, many, many more. We need companies with guts. Companies like this one that puts value first and not return on investment or budgets, or listen to board of directors and let them dictate how the company is run. This was an ad of Patagonia, a clothing company, that they put on Black Friday, the biggest shopping day in the United States. This is their most favorite jacket, most popular jacket. And the message is real simple. If you already have a message, you don't need another one. So what do? Because I'm standing here and preaching, and some of you are getting very upset, probably with my talk. It's like, well, I do my part. This is what I do. I'm an Arctic explorer. I love reading books about these old people that take chances, that have no idea where they're going, but just they're fueled with energy. They want to do something new, something different, and they trust in their team that they can make it happen. I have a lot of faith in people such as Shackleton. Very out-of-the-box thinking, people that are standing for something, people that are making dreams come true. And Shackleton was such a guy. This was his ad he put into the newspaper. If you read that, you think, there's no way on earth I want to join his expedition. Particularly the last line, honor and recognition in case of success. A record number of people signed up for that trip because they were ready for something new. And I think we are ready for something new. I see it here. I see the energy. I see a whole new young generation that don't want to have all sorts of possessions. Yes, they want experiences, but they also want a better world. And that is where I think my hopes come in. So here they are. I took 35 captains of finance with me, a very traditional conservative industry. I took them with me to the Arctic this year, and I let them see with their own eyes how fast the Arctic is melting. Not just that, I told him, you need to come up with a plan and give you 4 days. Unheard of in a bank to do something in 4 days. But they did. They pulled all their great ideas, all their great energy together, and it ended up with a great pledge. We made 5 plans. They're all been implemented at the moment in our new climate law in the Netherlands that's going to come into effect in November. So here's my last message for you. The world is changing fast. So fast that we have to do everything in our power. Each and every one of us have to do their own part. I don't care what it is. If you can only do certain things, that you think they might not so big, that's good too. But we have to move into that transition. Because the alternative of a planet that's going to be 3 or 4 degrees warmer than we have right now is unimaginable and unacceptable. Thank you.